are different across the 4 UK countries. So in Scotland and Northern Ireland, NHS dentistry is remunerated on an item of service basis, and what that means is they get paid a set fee for an individual item of treatment. That used to be the system in England and Wales, and in 2006 they moved away from this to the UDA system. The reasons behind the move was that the government thought that it encouraged over-treatment of patients, and there was also no cap on spending, so it was difficult for them to budget. The UDA system allowed them to cap the potential spend and also allowed them to commission services where there was a need. So unlike Scotland and Northern Ireland, you cannot just open an NHS practice anywhere. It has to be commissioned by the area team.
Yeah.
So the system was introduced with no piloting and was designed to move dentists off the treadmill and increase access. Initially, access decreased, as we mentioned, because of the privatising of dentists. But following increased government spend to rectify the problem, the government have now achieved their target so that more patients are now being seen on the NHS. But dentists have been unhappy as they still see the system as another treadmill. So on the back of that, pilots were introduced to a potential new contract in 2011. And this was focused more on prevention. But the initial pilots that were tested for 4 years actually failed, and they were not a success because both access, so the number of patients being seen by that practice, decreased, and also patient charge revenue decreased. So that's the amount patients contributed to their payments, which meant the government had to pay more. So on the back of this, prototypes were introduced 3 years ago. Initially, with 80 practices trialling, and these numbers increased in April 18. Very similar to the pilots, remuneration is based on the number of patients, but they've also introduced an element of payment by volume of treatments, similar to the UDAs. In addition, they're still measuring quality outcomes, however not remunerating on that at the moment. The main difference between the pilots and the prototypes was to ensure that practices who didn't deliver their targets could actually be financially penalised, which they weren't initially. And now they can have a maximum of 10% of their contract value taken away. So the BDA have stated they would like a change to the current system, but current prototypes are unfit as they still have UDAs or an activity target. They would like to see a system based purely on number of patients and outcomes only. The current UDA system, you'd say for the government, has actually delivered, as there's a cap on their spending. It offers value for money with the ability to increase patient charges ahead of any contract uplifts, which I mentioned earlier, and also access has improved. So you may say the appetite for the government to change the system is purely driven by political noise from the dental industry. So contract reform is now in its 8th year, and no definitive date for any rollout has been set, although 2019 was mentioned. But every time I've actually written slides for contract reform over the last 8 years, the timeline has always moved further and further away. So if there is a change, it is still not set and unlikely to be a big bang. So it will be evolution, the government has said. So the problems with 2006 was the UDA system was not piloted, and overnight the system changed. What they said is they will not repeat that and gradually introduce practices onto the new system if it does come in. Does that help you on the contracts?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So private dentistry has obviously been on the increase, and the overall spend on this by population is predicted to overtake NHS spend. This is due to the public becoming more conscious of their appearance, with rises seen in whitening, cosmetic dentistry, implants, and short-term orthodontics. So private dentistry is carried out in private-only clinics by general dentists and also by specialists. In addition, a large proportion is carried out on NHS patients, as I mentioned earlier, when they're prepared to pay more for cosmetic options such as implants and whitening. Private patients can pay for individual treatments as they go,